And exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio. Radio the way it should be heard. And now, Mr. Neely Fuller.
If you do not understand white supremacy, which is racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. Only confuse you. Only confuse you.
Good morning and good evening. Good afternoon. Welcome to TalkTainmentRadio.com. We go where you go on the world's greatest radio, and you are now in touch with the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby, and this is Radio the Way It Should Be Heard. Get in contact with the show. You can do that by going to Facebook.com/Talktainment. And what will appear on your screen is that you can see and you can hear us. There is also a like button right there, which you can hit, send your comments, and periodically I will read your comments. We'll not be able to read all of them, but we'll do some of them. Also, you can call 1-877-932-9766, or you can Gmail me at the numero 7, Mr. Bobby at gmail.com. Excuse me, I'll feel a sneeze getting ready to come on. But anyway, you can do that. Live on the line from Washington, D.C., as he is every week, and we appreciate that, is Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. Mr. Fuller, how are you this morning?
I'm still learning.
You are still learning. Okay, we are in the 8th area of people activity, which is the area of sex. So get your calls and comments ready for Mr. Fuller to give his thoughts or suggestions, and he'll be coming out of the book, his book, The United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept, and he will explain more about the book and what it's all about, who it is directed to, and all that. So Facebook.com/Talktainment to see and hear us, so we can get your comments going on. And 1-877-932-9766 or the numero 7, Mr. Bobby at gmail.com. Okay, we're talking about sex, and Mr. Fuller, let's start off with a question from the Gmail from Brother Mirto in what is commonly called French Guiana, or he says so-called French Guiana. He says this, on page 197 of the first edition of the Code of 1984, it is about having Mr. Fuller giving a more detailed explanation. It starts with this: give most sexual attention and or sexual allegiance only to those victims of racism, non-white persons of opposite complementary sex, who to the best of their ability seek at all times to speak and to act to resist and or eliminate racism, white supremacy. Mr. Fuller?
Yes?
Yeah, he asked that question.
Well,
A more detailed explanation of the 1984 edition when you wrote that. According to him, I don't have that copy in front of me.
Well, I have it in 197. That's seek to engage in sexual intercourse and or sexual play only with those persons, non-white, who show by their deeds that they at all times seek to resist and or eliminate racism. Seek to use such intimacy to improve communications with such persons and seek to help such persons to do that which is of constructive value. Now, there's an explanation, a reason and an explanation for this. As long as racism exists, it is incorrect for any person to engage in any act of sexual intercourse or sexual play, unless such acts help to promote resistance to and or the elimination of racism. And as long as racism exists, any persons who do not try to spend most of their time and energy speaking and are acting to eliminate racism do not deserve the pleasures of sexual intercourse. Now, this is like everything else in the textbooks or suggestions. But the purpose for sexual intercourse in a system of white supremacy should be to help people to think better about eliminating racism and or, by proxy, in the same process, helping to produce a product called justice, which means guaranteeing that no person is mistreated and guaranteeing that a person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help. Now, a person will say, you mean you don't have sexual intercourse unless it's connected, or even sexual play, go on so-called dates and whatnot, and romantic sojourns or whatever you want to call it, if you're non-white and you're on the planet, that your reason for engaging in sexual intercourse or sexual play or sexual anything should be connected somehow, directly or indirectly, with ending racism or producing justice? Are you kidding? No. Because we're in a war. And when you're on a wartime footing, everything, the collection of copper, tin, rationing of sugar, the making a new design for a poster or something like that, should be directed toward the war effort. So that theory, that concept, is nothing new. That's what they call getting on a wartime footing, because we are in a war, and if we're supposed to be acting in a counter-war fashion, counter-war meaning the only war being the war between those who believe in racism and those who don't. That's the only real war going on the planet, fundamentally. There are a lot of battles that take all kinds of guises, but the major war that's going on this planet in 2017 is a war between those who believe in racism, meaning white supremacy, and those who don't. And the white supremacists started that war whenever they established a system of racism, because racism is designed to mistreat people. That's all it's good for. Being a member of a race is designed to do nothing but see to it that people are mistreated for the benefit of other people, and it's all based on mistreating people based on color in the system of white supremacy. That's what it's for. It's designed for that purpose, to benefit from mistreatment. Racism is mistreatment. There's no reason to be a member of a race except to mistreat someone based on color. You can be a member of a sorority, a fraternity, a tribe, a family, if there were no racism. But when you say, I'm going to join a race, which is what you have to do, you're not really born in a race. That's an invention. You're going to join a race? What are you racing against? Time? Some people say, well, I'm racing against time. Well, you don't race against time. You use time. What are you racing against time for? But the white supremacists invented a concept called race. Racism or racism, based on, it's all about color. And so that's why, getting back to the point that is made on page 197 of the 1984 edition of the Counter-Racist textbook, it says we should be on that wartime footing because we have been put into a war, whether you like it or not. You woke up in the middle of a war. If you want to make an analogy, correlation of Normandy Beach, June the 6th, 1944, it's like being born on that beach. You don't have any options. You can't say, I don't want to be here. Why wasn't I born some other time? No, you were born in the middle of a war if you're a person of color. And that war is against you on account of your color. That's all you needed to do, is just be born with color in your skin. And the white supremacist says, oh, yon goes a fellow with color in his skin. And he's eligible for mistreatment. Let's find a way to mistreat him or her for our benefit. What benefit? Fun, glory, and material comfort. What makes the world go round? These are the motivations that all people have, all creatures, birds, bees, rhinoceros. They like to have what? Fun. And they like to have what? They like to have benefits and material benefits. And they like to have glory, meaning somebody kind of looks up to them on account of whatever it is that they're doing. Everybody wants that. It just comes down to a question of how you go about getting it. Somewhere, somebody thought up an idea of getting it through a concept called racism and or white supremacy. It turned out to be the greatest evil ever invented in the minds of people, because it affects more people than any concept, any political concept, any religious concept. It messes up everything. But it does do one thing. It produces great material benefits. And that's what throws people off. But it leaves a lot of wasted people on the factory floor. You get a lot of products, a lot of plastic, a lot of machinery, a lot of toys to play with, a lot of very beneficial inventions out of the system of white supremacy. But it destroys too many people in the process. You can get those same benefits through a concept called justice, which has never existed, by the way, in recorded history. But the concept exists, and there's probable cause to believe you can get the same benefits out of a system of justice, even better benefits, without destroying anybody, without mistreating anybody in a system of justice. So that's why the concept, the compensatory concept, is to replace the system of white supremacy with the system of justice. And you do this not only in sexual matters, but in all matters. All of the areas of activity that involve people. Economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, and sex, and of course, in war, counter-war.
All righty. TalkTainmentRadio.com is a 24/7, no-charge worldwide broadcasting facility with hosts delivering on various topics such as news, lifestyle, sports, law, health, wellness, religion, and politics. Now, here are several shows that I am going to share with you. Coming up the bat, here is Wiggins' World with Stacey Wiggins, The Kinsman with Malik Heru, and The Voice of Deliverance, Dr. Carr Robinson. Now, these shows are all exclusive to TalkTainmentRadio.com, and all you have to do is to click on programs for scheduled times. That's from TalkTainmentRadio.com, radio the way it should be heard. This is Mr. Bobby. I am the co-host on the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. We are in the 8th area of people activity, sex. We are in the 8th program in the 8th area of people activity. So we invite your questions by dialing 1-877-932-9766. You can go to Facebook.com/Talktainment Well, I'm getting ready to read a couple of likes off, and you can also Gmail me at the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby at gmail.com. They said I have to give the shout out, so here I go. Kim Joshua Jones, thank you. Book Dallas, got you in the house. Rick Z. Mitchell, but I can't read your question as of yet. Rick, I'll get on that. And this name here, Oyedi, I can't pronounce the first name, or I'm having difficulty pronouncing the first name. Try to break it up by syllables, but I did get the last name, Oyade. Thank you for your listenership and for your likes and for your comments. Hopefully I can get it on my phone here to read that. Okay, Mr. Fuller, let's start today on page 309 of the Revised and Expanded Edition. In the middle of the page, you said a very important part of your code, and that is in parentheses, should and must be that the very first time that your chosen mate inflicts bodily harm upon you must be the very last time that you allow yourself to be in contact with him or her. Could you explain that, please?
Yes. First time, last time. And it particularly is directed toward what we call the person traditionally who is of the weaker gender, because they have been put in that position down through history for the most part in most societies, and that's the female. The female person. First time, last time. In other words, I'll make it very explicit. When he, which is the case in most cases, strikes you physically, does bodily harm to you in a fit of anger or whatever, other than in self-defense. I mean, he's dissatisfied with something. Your chosen mate we're talking about. Your chosen mate. He chose you, you chose him. And it should be understood that when he inflicts bodily harm on you, lady, in this so-called arrangement, this relationship, that should be the last time. That first time should be the last time. Now, what do I mean by that? That that's supposed to be some type of threat? No, that's supposed to be a contract that you make before you hook up in the first place. That the very first time that he does bodily harm, what they call so-called, is incorrectly labeled, according to logic, domestic violence. The very first time should be the last time. And what does that mean in a functional sense? It means even though you might still be there, that so-called arrangement or so-called relationship is dead. And when I say dead, it cannot be resurrected. It's over. That's an announcement. And that should be understood when everything is harmonious as near as it can be. You can't get harmony in the system of racism anyway. But when you make that agreement to be with each other, the one thing worldwide that should be understood, no non-white male, because we're talking about non-white people now. This is the non-white code. This is the code for people of color. We should make this a part of our culture. I mean, a deep-seated part of our culture. First time, last time. You raise your hand, or you get a branch off of a tree or whatever, or you get a whip, and you strike the female with your hand, with your fist, with anything, any type of hostile act that expresses itself through physical violence. Now, you might scream and yell and all like that, and you will always sometimes in all so-called arrangements or relationships do plenty of that. That's acceptable. That goes with the territory. Dissatisfaction about something or another. That's what that comes from. Hostile language. That's acceptable. But physical violence should be a thing of the past as of here, 2017, this day forward, worldwide, as a part of the counter-racist code. It's an absolute no-no. And when we do it, even in a so-called fit of anger, even when we're sorry about it, 10 minutes later, it's too late, because it shouldn't happen. That should be a guarantee for every female on the planet of color. No physical violence, period, except in direct self-defense. I mean, she grabs a butcher knife or something like that and comes at you while you're having breakfast. Then you have to defend yourself. You have to do whatever it takes to calm that situation down. Mainly try to get away from it. And that's a terrible sign right there that things have gone too far. But the male inflicting physical violence, because it happens as we speak right now somewhere all over the world, no non-white male, no black male, physical violence against a black female when your ancestors didn't protect her, when all kinds of violence was inflicted upon her, when you both were enslaved by the white supremacists, and now you're going to reinforce that violence here in 2017 by saying, you are my woman, you do what I say, and if you don't, I will beat you up. That's what the white supremacists said to you and your ancestors, and they're saying it to you now. You do what I say do, or I will inflict bodily harm on you. I have beat you, and what you said was you're a woman. I beat you both, and your grandparents, and your parents before that, for generations. You people were made to be beaten by the white supremacists. And then you're going to turn around and look at her and say, well, you're weaker than I am. I don't have nerve enough to go up against the white supremacists, so I'm going to knock your teeth out. And you're supposed to be my woman. You don't deserve a female of any kind.
Wow.
And you definitely don't. If you're going to raise your hand against her, I don't care what she's saying or what she's doing. You just simply say, well, it looks like we can't get along and we need to find somebody we can get along with. Both of us. Because there's not going to be any hitting. That's out. I am not going to strike you to make you do what I say, because we are equal partners in this arrangement. You can't call it a relationship, because there are no relationships that you can worthy of that title between non-white people anywhere on this planet in the system of white supremacy. Prisoners of war do not have relationships. They have arrangements. According to what? According to logic. You can't be a subject of white supremacy and have a relationship with anybody, because you're subjects of a foreign power everywhere on this planet if you're a person of color. And what is that foreign power? That awesome system called the system of white supremacy and or the system of racism, one and the same.
Well, 1-877-932-9766 is the number you can call, or also facebook.com/talktainment or the numeral 7 mrbobby@gmail.com. From the facebook.com/talktainment line, Brother Muko Bam from Baltimore, Maryland. Brother Muko, I can't read your message because it's too small on this screen, but if you can, give us a call and do what you do. Whitney Mims is in, and Quentin Hill. Quentin Hill is there. As we continue on with the show, Mr. Fuller, this comes from Mordecai Malik. He says this: the climate for a race war is imminent in this country, in my opinion. Mr. Fuller expresses that anyone who kills someone should die themselves. Does he think that black people who stand up against oppression, race soldiers, Klansmen, Nazis, or any other genre of white supremacists should die if the opposition results in the death of those racists by the hands of the victim? Just to clarify, if the victim kills the oppressor who is actively engaging in harming them, should they too be put to death for defending themselves? Now, if your answer is yes, Mr. Fuller, the victim should be put to death, then where does that leave us as non-whites in regards to dealing with a violent oppressor? And Mr. Fuller, if your answer is no, do you recommend all non-whites immediately retaliate against violent racists with the intent of taking their lives before they can take ours? Thank you for the time, Brother Mordecai.
I said very clearly in both the 1984 edition and in the 2016 edition of the textbook for victims of white supremacy, I made it very clear, I think, over and over again, self-defense is always correct. You defend yourself against violence by whatever it takes to stop the violence when it's direct against you. Now, you're already a victim of violence by being a prisoner of war, and the war was declared against you before you were even born. All the non-white people on this planet now were not born at the time that the system of white supremacy was firmly established. And we were made prisoners of war right out of the womb, or even before coming out of the womb, because our progenitors, the people we call our mothers, our fathers, they were also prisoners before we were born. That applies to every person of color on the planet in 2017. So that's a done deal. But now when the prison masters come around with whips to beat you or guns to shoot you, and you have a means of defending yourself, you do so. If they come there with the intention of doing that, because that's just plain instinct. You defend yourself. But what applies to you killing yourself after having killed a racist or suspected racist is when you willfully and deliberately go seeking them out and kill them. And all that is explained in detail in the war section. In the war section, the 9th area of activity of the textbook for victims of white supremacy. Because I'm not going into that now, because it's very, very specific, it's very, very intricate, and it has to be done with super accuracy in order to not have confusion.
All righty, TalkTimeRadio.com on the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. We are in the 8th area of people activity. It is the area of sex, according to what Mr. Fuller has penned in his book, The United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept. We will have Mr. Fuller talk about his book in a few moments. But before we go to our phone call, I want you to consider these 5 questions, and maybe you can respond or have a question for Mr. Fuller. The first question is, or suggestion, beginning on page 310 of the Revised Expanded Edition. Consider this. Before engaging in sexual intercourse with someone that you have never engaged in sexual intercourse with, make sure that you do the following. And Mr. Fuller has suggested some things there. Also consider this one. Do not produce offspring until you can adequately feed, clothe, and shelter them with very little help from others, and until you are ready, willing, and able to teach them in great detail about racism, white supremacy, what it is, and how it works in all areas of activity. Number 3, this is on page 311, when choosing to respond to general questions about your sexual activities, say, and then he has the following. Question number 4, does every person in the known universe have a so-called serious sex problem? Consider that one. And this one here, what is the only logical reason for a non-white male and non-white female to engage in sexual intercourse and or sexual play during the existence of white supremacy, racism? So consider those as we move on to the show. Let's go to the phone lines. What line? Number 3. Okay, line number 3. You are now on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead, please, with your question.
How you doing? How's it going, Dr. Fuller? How's it going, Bobby?
Okay, go ahead, sir.
Yes, that was a comment made, and in reference to one of Neely Fuller's categories, as far as the 9 sectors of life, what he talks about as far as sex, war, and it relates exactly the way Neely Fuller said it. I just want to know what he think about it. Did he hear about the comment? Lately the NFL protesting and, the standing and everything, and with the NFL and everything, it's been kind of big. There was one owner by the name of, he owns in Texas, Mr. McNair. He made a comment. He said the prisoners should not run, the inmates should not run the prison. And I just want to know, did Neely Fuller hear about that, or what did you think about that comment? Because it wasn't eradicated or anything. No one said anything, but I thought it was racial. But I just want to know, in Neely Fuller's thoughts, in his own words, that's the way he quoted it, and I just want to know what you think about that.
Okay.
Coming from the owner.
Mr. Fuller?
Well, according to the code, if someone mentions, always pay attention to words. That's a part of the code. So if a person spoke about me within the context of me being a prisoner and made a statement like that, I would say that is true. Prison masters tell prisoners what to do. Then I would have a battery of other questions. Am I a prisoner? Because I thought that I was, and I just looked for confirmation from the person who is identifying, if they were identifying me as a prisoner. My first question would be to that person, am I a prisoner of war? Do you see me as a prisoner of war? And I would wait for the answer. Not being argumentative, because the part of the code is, once you ask a question, do not interfere with the answer, because that causes confusion. Wait for the person's answer that you are asking the question of, like Tom Cruise did in the movie A Few Good Men, when he kept telling Colonel Jessup, asking Colonel Jessup, did you order code red? And the colonel responded, I did my job and I'd do it again. But the whole idea is to be persistent and consistent in asking the same question again. Once you ask a question and the question has not been answered, ask the question again, the same question, using the exact same words. Don't rephrase anything, because that'll be a different question. Just ask the same question. Am I a prisoner of war and wait for the answer. Now, I don't know what the answer would be, but after I get the answer to that question, then I would probably have about a dozen other questions. Why? Because the compensatory procedure for solving problems, the universal procedure for solving problems, is what? Questions and answers. Every problem that's ever been solved was solved through the process of questions and answers. So it's just a matter of how many questions and how many answers until you finally get to the final answer to all questions. And that would be the procedure. That's what I would do. And that's what I suggest, based on logic, that everybody else should do. Ask the person who makes the statement all of the questions. Don't ask someone else, what do you think he meant, and all like that. Let the person who made the statement say what he or she meant. Nobody else to speak. That's the way that works. That's the compensatory way. Make up for what's missing. That's what compensatory means.
Okay. Alrighty. At this time, TalkTainmentRadio.com, we go where you go, and you can download the TalkTainmentRadio.com app to your cell or to your tablet. That's radio the way it should be heard. I am Mr. Bobby. I'm the co-host of the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. You can get in contact with the show by going to Facebook.com/TalkTainment. You can also, and there's a like button, there's a comment button that you can push. Now, I can't read your comments per se. They are up on the screen, but it's so tiny, I can't see that, but I can get your name on there, and we are supposed to give you a shout out for that. You can also call in 1-877-932-9766. You can do that. We're looking for Brother Muko Bam to do that. And you can also Gmail me at the numero 7, MrBobby@gmail.com. If you do that, I will not be able to read your comments right now. In fact, the Gmails that I'm reading now are in the earlier part of October. So that goes to show you how backed up we are on Gmail. But we will get to them, as I said that we will. Mr. Fuller, this is the 45-minute mark. And at this time, this is the time where you are to speak about your book, how we can get it, the name of it, who it is addressed to, and all the pertinent information about obtaining a copy of the United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept. So, Mr. Fuller, go ahead.
You can get the book by going directly to producejustice.com. That's a website. producejustice.com. Like in production, you're trying to produce something, and it's not enough just to get rid of racism. You have to replace it with something. That's the law of the universe. You move something, something takes its place. Otherwise, what's the purpose in moving it? And you are supposed, if you move something from one place to another, or if you obliterate something, take it out of the universe altogether, you replace it with something better. That's the logical concept. So that's why you have that website named that, producejustice.com. And if you go to that website, what will come up on the screen, producejustice.com, is a announcement of how to get the textbook for victims of white supremacy, a compensatory counter-racist code. This code is directed toward individual victims of racism, racism being white supremacy. If you don't perceive yourself as being a victim of racism in any area of activity at any time, nothing in that book applies to you. But if you perceive yourself or someone else, if you're interested in helping that someone else, as being a victim of racism, the book does apply. And racism, of course, is identified in this book singularly as the system of white supremacy. There's no other form of racism because there's no other race other than the white supremacists. They invented it according to the evidence. And if they didn't invent it, they took up the invention and became masters of the invention. And so the book is designed to counter what they do as racists and to best help, hopefully, to produce something in its place called justice, which means guaranteeing that no person, nowhere on this planet or nowhere in the universe, ever mistreated for any reason. That's a guarantee. That's what justice would be. You have to guarantee it. No person is ever mistreated, and that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help. Underline constructive. That's what you want or should want if you're a believer in producing justice. That should be what you want to do with your time in this universe. Replace the most evil system ever invented in the minds of people, called the system of white supremacy, and replace it with a system that has never in recorded history existed. But it can exist. You can bring something in existence that has never existed. And that's a better form of government. And that government, conceivably, if you're trying to get rid of mistreatment of people, you want a government that guarantees that people are not mistreated. And that would be a government of justice. The book helps the individual victim to do this by what that individual victim thinks, what he or she says, because we're talking about thought, speech, and action here, and what the individual does and does not do, because everything in correcting a system that needs correcting is done through the process of thought, speech, and action. In other words, make sure that everything that you say is something that should be said to anybody all day long, every day, and have a code for doing that, so that you always say the best possible thing that can be said. And when it comes to doing action, that is, you always do the best possible thing, the most constructive thing that can be done in every circumstance. Because we, as people of color, should be constantly evolving into what? And this is shown in the book. Universal man and universal woman, acting in total harmony, one with the other, in every area of activity, every minute of every day. Not dictatorial. Doesn't say you must do this, but you should do this. And you do it willingly, because if you're not doing it willingly, that's dictatorship. We don't want any more dictatorships, except a guideline for logic in producing the best results in everything that we think, say, and do. That should be the goal. The best possible results, because everything is about results. You don't want to engage in anything that's going to make things worse. Always try to make things better. Universal man, universal woman, rather than have a whole planet like it is now, made up of what? White supremacists and their victims. That is disgraceful. That's a slap in the face to the creator of the universe. Every minute of every day.
Again,
what a mess.
Again, we can go to,
Go to producejustice.com.
Okay. All righty. From the Facebook From the Facebook.com/Talktainment line. I'm required to give the shout-outs. Dex Wolford is checking in, so thank you, Dex. And Nikki Young Love, she says, good morning. Thank you. That's Facebook.com/Talktainment, where you can see and hear the program, and also you can leave a comment if you'd like. Let's see here. Before I go to the phone line, France Darius, after Mr. Fuller takes this call, according to the rotation, you're up. Let's go to the phone line. What line am I on? 3? Okay. Line number 3, you are now on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead with your question, please.
Good morning, Mr. Bobby. Good morning, Mr. Fuller. This is Brother Muko.
Hey, Brother Muko.
Hey, how y'all doing? Still learning here in Baltimore, where we hold the compensatory constructive action discussions. St. Louis Drive, Lake Clifton, right across the street from the Dome, every Saturday, from 9 a.m. to 10. And this weekend we're going to be changing it up, but it'll still be someone there. But my question for Mr. Fuller, we had this, thing that's supposed to be a holiday yesterday called Halloween. And, the care unit here in Baltimore, Mr. Fuller, we listen to you a lot and we discuss a lot. But can you expound on the non-constructiveness of this celebration, Halloween?
Well, I made a note of it yesterday when I was watching television and seeing everybody in their costumes and the different regalia and parades, et cetera, young people, going around, from door to door, probably being watched real closely in this evil world by pedophiles as they moved about looking for hobgoblins. They'll certainly find them in that form. Little black children seeking candy, and if they knock on the door of a white supremacist who's a pedophile, they'll get plenty of candy, all right, along with a whole bunch of other things that usually go along with pedophilia in the system of white supremacy, where it is encouraged, by the way. And that's just one aside. But this thing called Halloween, I wrote a little note here, and I put down the word Halloween, and behind it I put what? A question mark. So it comes across as what? Halloween? 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 Meaning what? So what for? There is enough fear in the world. The system of white supremacy has made a whole planet a haunted house. All right? Full of constant terror and evil doings. So we have Halloween all the time. It doesn't come in October. It comes every day, every minute of the day, in this prison system called the system of white supremacy. It's a haunted house full of evil and plots and schemes to do what? Harm to people. To keep people what? In a state of fear. Halloween is for what? Scaring people. Right. So, non-white people, wherever they are afraid. They're afraid of each other, thanks to the white supremacists. You go out on the streets, anywhere. You go to the Sudan. You go to Morocco. You go to the Congo. You go anywhere where there are people of color. The white supremacists have seen to it that they are hobgoblins, that they are evildoers, that they are even black people who have been trained, 10, 12-year-olds, to do what? To be given gifts, not shoes, not books, about how to build things, how to make a house, how to put up electrical wire, how to have a better irrigation system so that you can get clean water. No. The hobgoblins of this world, if you want to call them that, whatever that's supposed to mean, the fearful people, the zombies, the zombie makers, they hand these little 12-year-olds candy in the form of what? AK-47s, and say, no, before I give you a pair of shoes, take this rifle, boy, and go down to the next village and kill everyone there that looks like you. You're 10 years old. I want you to adopt that philosophy. Halloween, that's what that's all about. You say, Fuller, Halloween don't necessarily mean that. Well, let's look at Halloween colors and black people. Black prisoners are walking around advertising for Halloween every day in what we call these penitentiaries. All year long. Black skin, orange uniforms. What are the colors of Halloween?
Black and orange.
Black and orange. They're in caged terror. That's what these penitentiaries are for. Where you get more terror. You learn more about terror. You're not teaching them anything that's going to be of constructive value, except how to be more violent. Violence is supreme. So they come out still thinking violently, because they get beat up while they're in there, sodomized and all that. Scary messages. That's what Halloween is about. Go out and teach your young people to be afraid. We already have enough fears, already enough bullets flying through your window in the so-called ghetto. You don't have to go out seeking to be afraid. But this is the kind of poison that the white supremacists are pumping up. And it looks like this year, 2017, they hyped it more than they ever have. You saw more costumes than I've seen in years of people looking like something to be afraid of. Halloween? Put a question mark behind that. For what? For what ultimate purpose?
Thank you, Brother Muko. Thank you so much for your call, my brother. Appreciate it. Okay, 1-877-932-9766 is the number you can call to get in contact with the show. To Brother Dex, calling, or rather from the Facebook.com/Talk line. For your comment, Dex, still learning. And Nikki, Mr. Fuller, Nikki agrees with you. Good observation, Nikki. TalkTimeRadio.com. Thank you for listening. Stay tuned for the second hour on radio the way it should be heard.
Thanks for listening to The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio.
The most important question in all racial matters is why. One should always ask it.
Radio, the way it should be heard.
You've got the power, the world's greatest radio. TalkTainmentRadio.com. Talktainment Radio, worldwide sound. Talktainment Radio.
With Mr. Neely Fuller, heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio. Radio the way it should be heard. And now, Mr. Neely Fuller.
If you do not understand white supremacy, which is racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. Only confuse you. Only confuse you.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are all over the planet. You are welcome to the broadcast of the second hour of the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby, and of course you're listening to it via talktainmentradio.com, radio the way it should be heard, but you can also do it on facebook.com/talktainment, where you can see and hear us. There's a like button there, and you can leave a comment. Candy Mac just did, Mr. Fuller, and also Dax Wilford, and even Nikki Younglove. The one word that I would sum up what they are saying is wow, because your analysis of Halloween, which you just did, was very eye-opening and very knowledgeable for people who do not know, particularly when you mention the colors of orange and black and so forth. Now, if you missed that, it's on the first hour of the program. I don't know if we will do that in the second hour, but Mr. Fuller, I'm allowing Mr. Fuller to have more and more time to explain or give examples of what's happening in regards to racism, which is white supremacy. You can also get in contact with the show by calling 1-877-932-9766, or you can Gmail me at the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, at gmail.com. We are at least a month behind, maybe even more, in our Gmails, but we want to take our time as we do this discussion in the 8th area of people activity, which is sex. So have your calls ready, 1-877-932-9766, your comments or your Gmails, and we will try and get to them here on radio the way it should be heard, talktainmentradio.com. Okay, Mr. Fuller, let me get back to this page here, if I can. Okay, yeah, here's a question from Franz Darius. Here it is, Franz. Mr. Fuller, he says, you give supremacists too much credit for controlling the masses. If everything is set up to maintain dominance, where do the concepts of rebellion/revolt originate? Our families, communities, religion, education, everything is controlled. We're all taught to obey, obey, obey. Why was there a Jesus, Denmark Vesey, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Garvey, to name a few? People who tried to, quote, rock the boat, upset the status quo, were eliminated. I don't wish harm or evil on any of them, but Minister Farrakhan is still alive, as is Jesse and Reverend Al. You figure that out. Panthers were purposely disbanded while the KKK and groups like them are allowed to thrive. One group's mission was to empower blacks. The other was to make America great again. Who's really in control, Mr. Fuller?
Well, that's the question. Who's really in control? Well, that's what this program every week is about. Who is in control are the white supremacists. I'm not talking about all white people. I can't say that because I don't know all white people. But I do know that there is a system of white supremacy in place. And the white supremacists, the white people who believe in white supremacy, have, according to the evidence, shown that they're the most powerful people on the planet because everybody hops when they say hop, if they are people of color. I haven't seen in the entire time I've been on this planet it happen any other way. Now, people do resist. People have shown that they don't like the system. I'm speaking against the system. That's all not a leader, not qualified to be a leader, because a leader has power. So you can't lead anybody unless you have power. I don't have power yet. I'm trying to get power. And I think that I can get power through the process of codification, which is what power is. Electrical power has to have a code. Otherwise, it's not, that power is just going to be abstract, just something out there, but it's not attached to anything. Power is something when you put things together, like a code, meaning a way of going about doing things. That's all a code is. Electricity is in the universe, but they do what they call harness it. And what that harness is you figure out, first of all, what is electricity. Then you figure out how to codify it, which means use it, channel it in a way that it does things that you want it to do. And it's the same way with the energy that people have. That's like electrical power. The power is already here in all of us, but we have to learn how to channel it, because the white supremacists have seen to it that everything that's in us dissipates or is directed toward making them more powerful. They attach us to them, and the attachment is arranged, because that's what it is, in such a way that we become weaker, they sap us of our strength, and they become more powerful. That's the equation. That's the mathematics of it. So, anti-racism comes from you having an anti-racist code. And that's what I'm trying to do with the textbook for victims of white supremacy, if I understand the question correctly. What do you do? Because everything comes down to doing something. And what we have done hasn't worked. So we need to try something different. And I'm saying, what is the missing link? What is it different we need to do from what we have been doing? We need to have an exact code for each and every non-white person on the planet, person classified as non-white and functioning as non-white, so that at the beginning and the end of each day, that person has become stronger than he or she was yesterday, but stronger in what way? Stronger in fashioning a code of behavior, because everything starts, everything that is ever done, everything that is ever finished is done through a code of some type, a code that works. That's all a code is, doing what works. And we should spend every day finding out what works and what doesn't work. And that includes finding out what your faults are, because we have faults like we wouldn't believe and don't want to believe. We can't go around trying to prove that we're already a powerful people. We're already an intelligent people. That we are already this and we are already that. We have tried that, bragging about what black people are. Stop that altogether. There's nothing to brag about. Absolutely nothing. Why? Because we're still standing on zero, that's why. Now people say, well, we've made a lot of progress. No, we haven't. Progress, according to logic in counter-racist science, means there's no more racism, because we have replaced it with a system of justice. 99 and a half won't do. The 50-yard line won't do. No cheering at the 50-yard line. No cheering at the 99 and a half line. No. End zone, game over, lights out in the stadium. And lights coming on in the same stadium, in the same universe, a few minutes later, with a whole new way of doing things, top to bottom, wall to wall, seat by seat. And each individual should have a code that brings that about. That's what I've tried to write.
Okay. He goes on to say, Mr. Fuller, there are some questionable holes in your doctrine. Whites are not afraid of genetic annihilation. On the contrary, they welcome the opposite. Look at the media's push to make IR unions more acceptable to all. Plenty of commercials, newspaper ads, pictures speak 1,000 words. Light-skinned blacks who can pass for white. Example, Vin Diesel, Beyonce, Dwight Eisenhower have all done so. What we are dealing with is the reality that white supremacists will, quote, win, end quote, in the end. Children born of white mothers tend to follow in the maternal line of white. That is, they will accept and favor the side of the ancestry which reaps the greatest reward. Mixed or biracial children will marry up, that is, to whites, with each succeeding generation. As this continues, the gene pool begins to change color, with the added bonus of black genetic superiority. Down the road, you will have white people who are no longer genetically inferior, but now possess the privilege of a black bloodline. We won't be around, but the probability points to an ultimate, quote, master race, end quote. Quite contrary to popular belief, this master race will be white. Read the white writing on the wall. Mr. Fuller?
Well, those are a series of statements, and that comes under VGQ. Nobody asked me anything. So, in any of that I just heard, I don't think. There's no question there. So, under VGQ, Victims Guaranteed Qualification, if that's a non-white person that wrote that, consider what was said. Even if it's a white person that said it, consider what is said and evaluate it and act accordingly, I guess. Just like, all opinions are equal in counter-racist science. Until what? Until the truth is proven one way or another about everything, and it's all over. All problems have been solved. Up until then, anybody's opinion of what the problems are and all of the intricacies of the problem and what to do about it, anybody's opinion may be the correct one. I just have mine.
Okay.
Victims Guaranteed Qualification. All non-white people are qualified to give their opinion of their status as prisoners of war.
All right.
In the racist system.
TalkTainmentradio.com is a 24/7, no-charge worldwide broadcasting facility with hosts delivering on various topics such as news, lifestyle, sports, law, health, wellness, religion, and politics. Now, here are a few that I would like to share with you. One is At the Table with Al Warner. Another one is The Voice of Deliverance, again, Dr. Carl Robinson. And if you like music, how about this? Jazz Showcase with Brother Ed. Now, all these shows are exclusive to TalkTainmentRadio.com. There is something there that you may like for your listening enjoyment. All you have to do is go to the TalkTainmentRadio.com homepage, click on Programs, and there's a brief description of it and how you can access the program, and that's good. Also, someone asked me, there's a donate button there, but you can donate if you'd like to, and some have. Thank you for that, especially BW, BW Gifts. Thank you, out of Houston. Anyway, all these shows are exclusive to Talktainment. That is TalkTainmentRadio.com. Radio, the way it should be heard. Hi, my name is Mr. Bobby, and I am the co-host on The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., who is live from Washington, D.C. to take your calls and respond to your calls and also to your Gmails and even your comments. Yes. So you can get the show, and Galen is working feverishly for it, to do that on Facebook.com/Talktainment, where you can leave a comment. And I'm supposed to give you a shout out, but right now that's not on the screen. But don't worry about that. You can also access us by calling 1-877-932-9766, or you can Gmail me at the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, at gmail.com. And speaking of that, Andrew Nicholson is up, and Andrew wrote this, Mr. Fuller. He says this, Mr. Fuller, at the bottom of page 307 in the revised expanded edition of the counter-racist code book in the area of sex, it is stated that according to compensatory counter-racist logic, there is not and should never be any social or sexual stigma associated with any part of, quote, the compensatory counter-racist sexual social intimacy code. Mr. Fuller, can you please explain what is meant by the use of the word stigma?
Oh, stigma just means derogatory, means something that is against. In other words, something that shouldn't be. There shouldn't be, in other words, there shouldn't be anything that's a stigma in a counter-racist code that has to do with sexual intimacy that is supportive of counter-racist ideology and counter-racist performance. Anything that non-white people do in the area of sex, which some things may not be so-called socially acceptable, but if it has a counter-racist effect, then that's what sexuality is supposed to be for in a racist system. All sexuality, just like all economics, just like all religion. I'm going to say that again. Just like all religion, every religion should be against racism. And if it's not, whoever has that religion should dump it right now. If it doesn't have in its package, ridding this world of the stigma that has been put on this entire world and the practice that goes with the stigma. Because that's an ideology that's been put in the practice of mistreating people. So every political system should be anti-white supremacy. Every religious system should be anti-white supremacy. Every labor union should be anti-white supremacy. Why? What is wrong with white supremacy? It gets things done. But like I said at the beginning of the program, yes, very efficient in getting things done. But destroying people in the process, deliberately destroying people, not destroying people inadvertently, it's designed to make a mockery of people who are created with color. So that people who have color in their skin are told that they are committing a sin. Committing a sin by doing what? By being born with color in your skin. Your color in your skin is a criminal act that you should be punished for. Whatever created you must have made a mistake. So we are going to punish you for that mistake that something made. even though you didn't have anything to do with it. Sorry about that. You should be persecuted for having color in your skin. Not for anything that you did. Not for anything that you might do. You got color in your skin. That's a criminal act. What are you doing here? What are you doing here? So I'm going to beat you up. I'm going to chase you down on a highway. And I'm going to shoot you. You thing, you Halloween creature. You frightening whatever you are. You got no business here. I'll tolerate you as long as I can keep a leash on you like a dog. And some of you walk around because you've been well trained by me calling yourself dog. That's my dog. Yeah, you're well trained, but when you break training, I will break you. Boy, gal, you were created for me to dog around. What's the matter with you?
Wow. Okay. Whew. Let's continue on with the Gmails. This comes from Neil. Says this, Mr. Fuller, I had an individual who I conversate with regularly tell me that her 8-year-old daughter revealed to her that she thinks she's gay. She asked me suggestions of how to respond, and my mind literally went blank. Normally, I'm able to come up with a compensatory response, but in this case, I could only think of my daughter, who's 5, and the reality of the challenging roads ahead. Mr. Fuller, I know we tell them the truth, but how can we respond to an 8-year-old child who thinks she's gay properly?
Ask questions. Why do you think that way? How did you get to think that way? It might be somebody told her that. It might be that somebody's already gotten to her. There's a lot of 8-year-olds. Stop and think about it, folks. Where do you send your child? Who is in contact with your 8-year-old? See, there are people who are what you call molesters, who say, hey, if you don't catch them early, you ain't going to get them later. So you turn them, you show them the way that you want them to go. And you infiltrate. You get into the kindergartens. That's where you go and get a good job. All right? Or it could be an associate. Sometimes little boys, little girls experiment. They're out there playing with each other, rolling in the grass, tumbling and whatnot. The old folks used to say what? The old folks used to say, you snore in a bear's face long enough, you'll learn to like it.
Whoa. Whoa.
Oh, yeah. And so when you get to be 30 years old, you don't even want people. You want some bear. That's what you want. Why? Because that's what you've been rolling around in the grass with. All right? I mean, when people's minds are being formed, they can go any kind of way. Now, there are people who argue and say, no, that ain't so. Yes, it is so, but it's not absolute. There are a lot of exceptions, lots of exceptions, where people genetically are truly that way, what they call that way. Gay, homosexual, lesbian, whatnot, and they got that way. And they're not lying when they say, I've tried not to be that way. But sometimes they just don't remember how it got started, too. Sometimes that's the case. And sometimes, in thousands, millions of cases, if you follow the logic, It could be in the genes. But now, in the system of white supremacy, why is this an issue with non-white people? Because the white supremacists are, just like in everything else, and this is why I have it in my book, that sex section, and I say a lot about it. Very few people mention it or speak against me for speaking against it. But I'm speaking against it not because I'm against people being so-called gay or homosexual or whatever you want to call it, or bi, whatever that means. I'm saying the white supremacists, just like in everything else, are manipulating the non-white people all over this planet and channeling all of that so-called gay movement, so that they have something that's assigned to white people, and in the long run, it's not showing on the surface right now, and I want to make this clear right now. Oh yeah, they're making it look like it's all together. No, it isn't. They got a plan for white people who are gay, and they got a plan for non-white people who are gay and lesbian and bi and transgender and queer, and on 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 into all varieties of sexual infinity. Sex is a very powerful force, and the white supremacists know that you got to have a plan for it if you're going to dominate people forever. And so they have looked at non-white people and they say, oh, I have to steer them in the way that I want them to go. But I have to do it in such a way, like I do everything, through deception, to make it think like it's their plan, when I will be pulling the strings in every move that they make. Every person of color, I will determine what their sexuality is. That's my ultimate goal. And how that sexuality will be distributed, and how it will be used to do what? To do like everything that I command. Serve me as a white supremacist. And so I will get my hold on the black intellectuals first and get them to follow my lead, and they will lead the rest of the herd. That's what they're doing, folks, in my opinion.
TalkTainRadio.com. On the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, who is live in Washington, D.C. We are still continuing the 8th area of people activity, according to Mr. Fuller's book, the United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept. We are in the 8th area, and we will be in this 8th area for quite a while. It is the longest chapter in the book, and we want to give due diligence to it to make sure that we are clear on the suggestions that Mr. Fuller is making in this book. So we will be on 6. This is program number 8. I don't know how many there are going to be, but we will go until we come to the end of it, however long that will be. But we do invite your questions and your participation, which many of you have. You can do this by going to facebook.com/talktainment, and there you can leave a comment or a question. Also, there's a like button there that you can also hit. Also, you can do this, 1-877-932-9766, or Gmail me at the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby at BOBBY@gmail.com. If you do elect to use that one, it will be quite a while before I get to your questions. We are at least, and maybe more, a month behind, and I have questions that come in all the time, but we try to get to as many as we can. When this segment started, you want to take that call? Yeah, why don't we see if we can get that call before we go into that. Okay, caller, what line are we? What line am I? Okay, line 2 or 3? I didn't. Oh, 3. Okay, line 3. You on with Mr. Neely Fuller? What is your question?
You got me, brother?
Hey, my brother, go ahead, extermination man.
Yes, sir. The more things change, the more they remain the same. It was said many, many moons ago that America is the only nation in history that has gone directly from barbarism to degeneration without the usual interval of civilization. See, these psychopaths in this country, they never been civilized, and they are not about to start being civilized. The Caucasian has spread death, hate, diseases, and filthy conduct across the planet, and they are working on space. Now, I want to just suggest to people again, they are going to exterminate non-Caucasian in this country. They will not be stopped. What you got to think about now, how can you save your life, some grandchild life, or some loved one life? Of course, the psychopaths run the planet in space. But it doesn't mean that you might not be able to go somewhere and live out your life or take some grandchild. But right now in America, black people time is up. They are creating an atmosphere for us to be exterminated. Look at what they're doing. Listen to Mr. Fuller and the conduct they spread. Why are they doing this? They are creating an atmosphere for chaos to reign. And when you have an atmosphere like that, the people on the bottom, they are the ones who are going to pay the price, and that is black people. This is why you're seeing all this crazy conduct. They are setting it up for the world. They're going to tell the world after we exterminate, oh, we didn't know that was going to happen. We didn't know it was going to come to this. That's what they're doing. They are setting that up. So if you can get out, think about it. You don't have to go. I'm just putting this out here. If you can get out of here, some grandchild, get them out of here. Because these psychopaths will not be stopped.
All righty. Thank you, Mr. Extermination Man.
You, brother.
Yes, sir. We affectionately call him the Extermination Man. Some people didn't particularly like that, but I didn't name him. People named him, and he seems to like that, too. And he is heard worldwide as he gives his VGQ on his thoughts here. From the Facebook.com/Talktainment line, let me read some of the comments. Let's see. Dex Williford, now I can see it, says this: thank you for allowing Mr. Fuller to say his part. We get more information that way. Not offended at all. I'm glad Mr. Fuller is getting to you. Nikki Younglove said, the one thing I've noticed about Halloween is how much the dominant society is really into that holiday, more so than anybody else. Williford said the Halloween discussion was amazing. Candy Mack indicated, wow. Also that Mr. Fuller makes more sense than dollars. Valencia Joseph, I understand your problem, and we're dealing with that right now about the telecast experiencing some problems with that. We're trying to work that out, and it is a little upsetting, but we're trying to work that. Daryl Watson, I'll try to get to your question. Emma Apenu II, or Emma, greetings from Bali, Indonesia, Mr. Fuller. And Tanika Allen, good morning from Los Angeles, California. All righty. Let's get to this question from the Facebook.com/Talktainment line. Now, I'm going to try to read it just as is, Brother Daryl Watson. Mr. Fuller, former Trump advisor Sebastian Gorka said the exact same thing as you, Mr. Fuller, about black people across the world slaughtering each other by the bushel. When I first heard him say that, I thought about you, Mr. Fuller, because you're the only person I've ever heard say that. Then he gives a website. Then a few days later, the owner of the Houston Texans NFL team said, quote, "Don't let the inmates run the prison," end of quote, referring to black players that are protesting. And you always say that we as black people are in a global prison. Just thought I'd pass it along. And he gave, I guess, an interview or a tag with Gorka, why black Americans are black Africans are murdering each other. Mr. Fuller, you care to comment before we go ahead on here?
Well, there's no question there, so I wouldn't know where to make a comment.
Okay.
But it is a fact that black people do slaughter each other, but we're taught at an early age. I mean, that, hey, that's what you do. That's what black people are here for, to be slaughtered, either by white people or black people or anybody who just wants to slaughter them. I mean, you slaughter them like you do pigs, or some type of creatures from that, in the movies that they make, about aliens and whatnot. We're aliens. We're not really supposed to be here, according to the white supremacists, but they'll tolerate us, because somehow we got off at the wrong bus stop or something, and their position is, we'll try to do something with you now that you're here, but it ain't much we can do with you because, it ain't nothing to you. You're just a bunch of scraps. You're just in the way of everything, but we'll try to make something out of you since you're here. But we really shouldn't even be putting up with you.
Okay.
All right? Mm-hmm. And that's the white supremacist doctrine.
Okay.
So when we'll come up and we're taught that, as a black person, I'm taught that. I'm sitting in the first grade and in the picture books and whatnot. I'm taught about Cinderella and Snow White and all these other people. I don't know if they still teach all of that, but they do in the movies. Snow White is still a very popular movie. All right, Snow White. Think of it. Snow White.
Got it.
Snow White. That tells you something right there.
Yes, sir.
Okay? And then you have something called the Barbie doll. Now, you got some dark-skinned Barbie dolls, but they, just like in society, they come in kind of second and third place. Because the real Barbie is what? Blonde-haired, blue-eyed, chalk-white skin. With maybe a little, rosy in the cheeks, but that comes from the blood inside that you can see through the light. So, that's what that's all about. That's the standard.
Mm-hmm.
All over the world. People who call themselves Asians, they all want to look like the females, not all, but many, want to look like Barbie. People who are born with black eyes want blue eyes. Why? Because Barbie, somebody white, is blue-eyed. Adolf Hitler's Spanish, 6 foot, blonde hair, blue eyes, chalk white skin. Perfect health. That is supposed to be the standard for the world. If you can't make that standard, you're walking around here with your black self, somehow, shame on you. That's white supremacist doctrine. You're all out of sync with nature and everything else. You don't have any business in the universe. But since you're here, we'll tolerate you as long as you do what the white supremacists say.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, oblivion.
Okay. From the Facebook.com/Talktainment comment line, Kim Joshua Jones in Dallas says hello. Quentin Hill is saying good morning from Virginia. Book Dallas, hello from Larry in Dallas. We got a good following down in Dallas. And Rick Z. Mitchell said, Mr. Fuller, if the Holy Bible was designed or put together by white supremacists, wouldn't they have designed it to make white supremacy stronger?
Well, I don't know if the Holy Bible was put together by the white supremacists or not. That's controversial. Some people say yes, some people say no. I say I don't know.
Okay.
But I do know this. Whatever the white supremacists touch, they are not going to fool with it for 5 minutes. unless they figure out a way in 5 minutes to put it to work for the system of white supremacy. They'll find something else to touch. So if a white supremacist puts his hand on a Bible or her hand on a Bible, they are going to say, now, this Bible is already here, but I am going to use it to do the things that I want to do. And I'm going to make everybody else of color fall in line so that this Bible will support whatever it is that I want done. And I will even change the meaning of every passage of it without changing a word. I'll just say, that's not what that means. And the black preacher will say, that is what that means. It's right here in the Bible. But the white supremacists say, boy, what did I say it meant? It meant that yesterday. Why? Because I said that it meant that yesterday. But that's not what it means today, boy. Hey, who is your master here on earth? Your master in your heart and in your head and in your church that I allow you to have is somebody else. What you call your God, and that's okay, I'll let you do that. But boy, when I walk in your church, with or without a gun, you will, and you and your congregation, your choir, and everybody you got here, young and old, will and have obeyed me from day one. So don't get in my face waving a Bible, boy.
Wow. Woo! Let's do this. Hello from New Orleans, from Whitney Mims. Wanted to get that in there now that I have half of my screen up here. TalkTainmentRadio.com. We go where you go. Download the TalkTainmentRadio.com app to your cell or to your tablet. That's radio the way it should be heard. I am Mr. Bobby. I'm the co-host on the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., who is live from Washington, D.C. We are accepting your calls at 1-877-932-9766, or you can go to facebook.com/Talktainment, where you're supposed to be able to see and hear the program live. I guess you can also catch it on podcast or replay, but you can do that, or you can Gmail me at the numeral 7, MrBobby@gmail.com. Mr. Fuller, this little space that I'm going to give you right here is going to be for your book. The title of it, and where can we get it from, and is it available in Canada or the UK?
Yes, you can get it in the UK, I have been told. The people who are handling that for me told me about a month ago that it is available in the UK. There might be some difficulty that they're having now that they didn't have before in getting it into Canada. I don't know if that's true or not. I have to check with them again. But they were having some difficulty with the Canadian shipments. Now they're able to get it in the UK, I have been told recently. And you can get the book in what they call the quote-unquote continental United States by going to producejustice.com. In fact, anything associated with the book or anything associated with me, that is the site that you go to. That's the official site. producejustice.com.
Yes.
producejustice.com.
Okay.
What will come up on the screen is all of the information that you will need, as far as I know, for getting the book or getting in touch with this program, I understand.
Yes, sir. Okay, good. All right, now, we ask 5 questions. If you were listening earlier in this particular hour, we ask 5 questions. We are not going to get into all of them. However, we will get into this one, which was the first question. This is on page number 310. 310 at the very top of the page. And we're going to have Mr. Fuller respond to that. This is the question. Before engaging in sexual intercourse with someone that you have never engaged in sexual intercourse with, make sure that you do all of the following. Mr. Fuller, could you go with your suggestions, please?
Well, if we can get to all of them. make certain that the person is non-white. Now you may say, well, why? If we're going to have black and white harmony at any time in the future, I mean, presumably we will have. I mean, why not start now? Why do you keep saying, why do you keep saying we shouldn't have sexual intercourse with white people if we are non-white? The answer is because it causes what? Confusion. The white supremacists thrive off of confusion. We don't have an equal situation. White people in the system of white supremacy are in the position, whether they want to be or not, of being prison masters. That's what the system of white supremacy insists upon. That people who are classified as white are in the master category. They're in the royalist category. Kings and queens of the entire planet. They don't mix with the riffraff, which means the non-white people, the scraps, the great unwashed, the great uneducated, the great unfit for anything except when they are told to do something at the crack of a whip. That is supposed to be the status of non-white people in the system of white supremacy. So, when the master of a prison has sexual intercourse with the prisoners, what does this actually do? It makes the master stronger. It doesn't make the prisoner stronger. Look at what happened to Pocahontas. Oh yes, she felt good. She was dressed up and wined and dined and taken to different places in the world and allowed to, quote unquote, mix, you might say, socially with royalty. But what happened to the people that she was trying to help by having sexual intercourse with Mr. John Rolfe? It has been reported in the books that I have read, and Captain John Smith, right here in Virginia. She's supposed to be an Indian maiden, very, very young, not really of age, someone said. But here she is having sexual intercourse with two or more white gentlemen in the system of white supremacy, wined and dined and showcased around, something that still happens today all over the world. But the people that she came from, the people that she was trying to gain influence by participating in sexual activities with white people, and she's non-white. She's supposed to be classified as a heathen, an Indian. What happened to her tribe? It went right down the tubes. Her having sexual intercourse with the prison masters did not help anybody at all to get justice. It went just the other way. So that's the reason. Now I keep emphasizing that because that's very important. It's important in 2017. After there's no longer any such thing as white supremacy, then sexual intercourse can be easily negotiated in such a way that what white people say that they fear most, and that is that white people would disappear, which that would happen without some type of genetic considerations. But we can give everything those genetic considerations if we're supposed to be intelligent, civilized people, which is what all people are supposed to be, hopefully for the first time. Because there's never been a civilization on this planet in recorded history as far as I know. Because there's never been a situation that I've ever heard of where somebody, somewhere, was not being mistreated. You can't have a civilization, period. I don't care what you call it, when you have people being mistreated. But what they call civilization, Roman civilization, Greek civilization, read it. Read about it. I wasn't here, but read all of the books that they say about Roman civilization and Greek civilization, and see if you can find somebody being mistreated. Is somebody being mistreated every second of that history? Not to say anything about minutes. Feeding people to the lions, and you call that civilization? So, let's get back to the subject. We want a civilization. So you can't get it by prison masters having sexual intercourse with prisoners. That's not the procedure. There's a procedure for sexual intercourse.
Yes. Okay, well, we have to leave it there, but what we're going to do is pick up the discussion on our next program, which will be program number 9 in the area of